Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. It was meant to be a quiet gesture, a tender surprise to mend what had frayed. Michael Harper's hands tightened on the steering wheel as sleet pelted the windshield, the rural road ahead swallowed by a gray haze. The wipers fought a losing battle against the storm, but Michael pressed on. He'd driven nearly 9 hours from Portland, weaving through Oregon's backroads, determined to reach the coastal town of Astoria. His wife of 7 years, Lauren, was there, celebrating her 35th birthday at a boutique wellness retreat with her cousin, Vanessa, and a few close friends. She thought he was chained to his desk, drowning in deadlines, just another husband lost to spreadsheets and late-night emails. She had no idea he'd reshuffled his entire schedule, secured a reservation at a cliffside restaurant overlooking the Pacific, and had a custom lemon chiffon cake, her favorite, nestled in a box on the back seat, inscribed with "Always yours" in delicate icing. The irony of that message would soon cut deeper than he could imagine. The storm grew fiercer as Michael neared Vanessa's neighborhood, where charming craftsman homes glowed faintly under ice-dusted eaves. The roads were slick, the sidewalks buried, and his boots crunched through frozen slush as he carried the cake box, each step a quiet vow to keep faith in them. That faith crumbled before he even reached the porch. He stopped short of the door, the wind slicing through his jacket, when laughter spilled from inside. Lauren's voice, bright but edged with something unfamiliar, something careless. Then he heard his name. "He's probably staring at his laptop right now," Lauren said, her tone dripping with mockery. "If I have to hear one more story about his hiking trails or those awful fishing puns, I swear, more laughter." Vanessa's voice cut in, sharp and conspiratorial. "You deserve someone who doesn't think a thermos of coffee and a campfire is peak romance." Michael stood frozen, the cake box heavy in his hands, his pulse louder than the storm. He should have turned back, but he didn't. He listened, each word tightening the knot in his chest. "You know how he got all teary at that documentary last month?" Lauren said. "I couldn't even look at him. Grown men don't sob over whale migrations." Vanessa snorted. "You've always picked the sensitive ones. Maybe this new guy's the spark you've been missing." Michael's grip faltered, the box tilting slightly. "New guy." Lauren's voice dipped, sly and thrilled. "Let's just say he's impressive. Michael could never measure up, if you know what I mean." The words landed like a blade, sharp and precise. "But does Michael have any idea?" Vanessa asked, a trace of caution in her tone. Lauren laughed, cold and dismissive. "He's too busy being predictable. Even if he found out, what's he going to do? Write me a sad poem and sulk?" The worst came next, a line that burned into his memory. "Honestly, if he slid off the road tonight, the insurance would at least get me that SUV I've been eyeing." Laughter followed, light and cruel, as if his life were a punchline. Michael stepped back, the sleet stinging his face, the cake box now a weight he could barely hold. He stared at it, its cheerful yellow ribbon mocking him, then made a choice. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room fell silent. Lauren spun around, her wine glass nearly slipping from her hand, her eyes wide with shock. "Michael," she whispered, dread blooming across her face. He didn't speak, didn't yell. He walked to the dining table, set the cake down with deliberate care, and met her gaze for a long, unbroken moment. Then he turned and walked back into the storm, the door clicking shut behind him. What Lauren didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Michael had a habit she'd always teased him for. He carried a small digital recorder, a core from his days as a freelance writer, used to capture fleeting thoughts, gift ideas, or lines of poetry he'd whisper to himself. It had been running the entire time he stood outside the door, capturing every word, every laugh, every betrayal. Michael drove through the night, the sleet turning to a relentless blur, his headlights carving a fragile path through the dark. His face was a mask, but his hands trembled on the wheel, betraying the storm inside him. Around 1 a.m., he pulled into a faded motel off the highway, its neon sign flickering vacancy like a half-hearted promise. Room 12 smelled of damp carpet and stale coffee. The bed sagged under him as he sat, staring at the recorder in his hand. He pressed play, and the voices filled the room. Lauren's scorn, Vanessa's glee, the casual cruelty of it all. It didn't feel real. This was the woman who'd once traced his palm with her fingertip, promising forever under a starlit sky. The woman who'd clung to him at her brother's funeral, whispering that he was her anchor. Now she was joking about his death for a car. He played the recording again, then again, each listen chipping away at the man he'd been. The part about the new guy, her smug pride, her giggle as she compared them, twisted something deep inside him. By dawn, he was still sitting there, not crying, not raging, but breaking in a way that felt permanent. What would he do with this truth? How could he face the woman who'd turned his love into a joke? And what was on that recorder that might change everything? The motel's fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across Michael Harper's face as he sat on the edge of the bed, the recorder still in his hand. The storm outside had softened to a steady drizzle, but inside room 12, the air felt heavier, thick with the weight of Lauren's words replaying in his mind. If he slid off the road tonight, the insurance would at least get me that SUV. Her laugh, Vanessa's cackle, the casual venom. It was all trapped in that small device, a digital wound he couldn't stop prodding. By morning, his eyes were bloodshot, not from tears but from the relentless churn of betrayal. He hadn't slept. He wasn't sure he ever would again. Michael drove south towards Salem, where his closest friend, Ryan, lived in a cluttered bungalow on the edge of the city. Ryan opened the door in a faded hoodie, a mug of tea in hand, and frowned at Michael's hollow expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost, man." Michael brushed past him, collapsing onto a couch that smelled faintly of dog fur. For an hour, they sat in silence, Ryan sensing the gravity without pushing. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice low and brittle. "She's cheating." Ryan's mug paused halfway to his mouth. "Lauren." Michael nodded and slid the recorder across the coffee table. "Listen." Ryan pressed play, and the room filled with Lauren's voice, her scorn, her boasts about the new guy, the insurance joke that made Ryan's jaw tighten. When it ended, he leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Goddamn. I'm sorry, Mike." Michael stared at the floor. "I didn't mean to record it. It just happened." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "But you've got it now. All of it." The silence that followed was dense, like the moment before a storm breaks. Ryan leaned forward. "What's your next move?" Michael didn't answer. He didn't know. The next few days blurred into a haze of autopilot. He worked remotely from Ryan's spare room, a cramped space with a desk wedged against a window overlooking a soggy backyard. Lauren's calls started coming, first tentative, then frantic. Her voicemails piled up, a progression of tones: confusion, deflection, anger, desperation. "Michael, where are you? Call me back." Then, "You're blowing this out of proportion. It was just talk." Later, "You can't just disappear like this." Not once did she apologize. Not once did she admit what she'd done. He ignored every message, letting her voice echo into the void. On the third day, curiosity, or maybe masochism, led him to their shared cloud storage, a digital relic from their early years when they'd swap photos and playlists. Lauren had never been careful with tech, assuming he'd never dig. He found a folder labeled miscellaneous_2025, innocuous enough to be overlooked. Inside was a video, grainy but unmistakable. Lauren's laugh, breathy and excited, filled the speakers. A man's silhouette moved in the dim light, her voice teasing, "Michael could never do this." The clip was short, but it was enough. Michael closed the laptop, his hands shaking, not with grief, but with something colder, something that felt like resolve. That night, the ache of betrayal hardened into something else: clarity. Lauren hadn't just cheated. She'd mocked him, diminished him, turned their marriage into a stage for her cruelty. If she wanted to play games, he'd play too, but on his terms. He started small, methodical. He changed the passwords to their joint accounts, bank, streaming, even the smart thermostat in their Portland home. He opened a new bank account in his name, transferring half their savings before she could notice. He called a financial advisor, discreet and sharp, who confirmed what he'd suspected. Lauren had been bleeding their accounts dry. Boutique purchases, cash withdrawals in Seattle and Eugene, hotel charges in cities she'd never mentioned visiting. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was reckless, entitled, assuming he'd never catch on. Michael drove to their house late one night, knowing Lauren was still in Astoria. The locks were still his, the security system unchanged. He moved quickly, collecting what mattered. His external drives with years of writing, a box of old journals, the recorder. He left one thing behind, a single key, his house key, on the kitchen counter beside a note. I won't yell. I won't beg. But I'm done being your fool. He didn't look back as he drove away, the Portland skyline fading in his rear view. Lauren's messages turned venomous when she returned home. You're pathetic, Michael. Running away because of a stupid conversation? You're making me the bad guy. He didn't respond. Instead, he did something he hadn't planned. He uploaded the audio to an anonymous forum, a corner of the internet where people shared stories of betrayal. No names, no specifics, just the raw recording and a title. Caught my wife laughing about her affair. Said she hopes I crash for the payout. What now? Within hours, the post exploded. Strangers poured in with outrage, empathy, advice. Leave her, one wrote. She's a narcissist, said another. Then, a comment that stopped him cold. Is this Lauren P. for Portland? Sounds like her. Michael didn't reply, but the internet did what it does. Whispers spread. Lauren's social media went private. Vanessa's profile vanished entirely. Mutual friends started texting Michael, fishing for details he didn't give. Lauren's father, Greg, called, his voice gruff with disapproval. Whatever's going on, you don't air family business online. Be a man, Michael. Michael sent one reply. A link to the audio, nothing else. Greg didn't call back. Lauren tried everything. Flowers delivered to Ryan's address. A tearful voice memo claiming she was caught up in the moment, that the new guy was just a fling. She never mentioned the video, likely unaware he'd found it. Michael listened to her pleas, then deleted them. The man who'd once spent hours crafting her birthday surprises, handwritten letters, playlists, a carved wooden box for her jewelry, was gone. In his place was someone new, someone who valued silence over sentiment. By the end of the week, Lauren's world began to crack. Her employer, a marketing firm, received an anonymous email with the audio. She was placed on administrative leave, pending an investigation. Her public image was now a liability. Old friends distanced themselves, their texts to Michael dripping with awkward sympathy. Vanessa, caught in the crossfire, sent a single message. You didn't have to ruin her life. Michael didn't respond. He wasn't ruining anything. He was exposing what Lauren had built, a house of lies propped up by his trust. Then, one evening, Ryan answered a knock at the door and turned back with a grim look. It's her. Lauren stood on the porch, rain-soaked, her coat clinging to her frame, eyes red and smudged with mascara. Michael stepped into the hallway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Why are you here? He asked, voice flat. She took a shaky step forward. We need to talk, Michael. Please. He didn't move. You already talked. I heard every word. Her face crumpled, but he wasn't done. What would she say to save herself? And what was Michael planning, with that recorder still in his pocket and a video she didn't know he had? The rain hammered Ryan's porch, a relentless drumbeat that matched the pulse in Michael Harper's temples as he faced Lauren. She stood shivering, her wool coat sodden, her eyes pleading for a lifeline he had no intention of throwing. Michael, please, she said, voice cracking. Just hear me out. He leaned against the doorframe, arms still crossed, his silence a wall she couldn't breach. You said enough in Astoria, he replied, each word measured sharp. I was there, Lauren, with a cake. For you. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Ryan hovered nearby, a quiet sentinel, ready to step in if needed. Lauren's hands twisted together, rain dripping from her sleeves. That wasn't me, Michael. Not really. I was drinking, venting. I said things I didn't mean. He tilted his head, eyebrow raised. You didn't mean to wish I'd crash? Didn't mean to laugh about another man while I was driving through a storm for you? Her face flushed, a mix of shame and defiance. It was a stupid joke. A dark, awful joke. You know I'd never want that. Michael's gaze didn't waver. You compare me to him. Mock me. Said I'd cry if I found out. You weren't joking then. Her breath hitched, eyes glistening. I was angry. I got caught up in things I shouldn't have. But I love you, Michael. We can fix this. He stepped forward, just enough to make her flinch. Fix what? The lies? The video? Her eyes widened, panic flickering. What video? She whispered, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Michael's lips twitched, not a smile, but something colder. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You forgot we shared that cloud drive. Lauren's knees buckled slightly, and she gripped the porch railing. You went through my files? He nodded, unflinching. I saw you. Heard you. Michael could never. Sound familiar? She shook her head, frantic. That was private. You had no right, no right. His voice rose for the first time, not loud, but piercing. You turn our marriage into a joke, Lauren. You don't get to hide now. She stepped closer, voice desperate. I miss you. I know I messed up, but we're still us. We can rebuild. Michael's expression hardened. There's no us anymore. Her breath caught, a sob breaking free. You're divorcing me? He nodded, calm again. Papers are being drawn up. Her eyes darted, searching for an angle, then narrowed. This is about your pride, isn't it? You're punishing me because you feel small. Michael equals no, Lauren, he said, voice steady. It's about knowing I deserve better than a liar. Her hand lashed out, a weak slap across his cheek, more gesture than force. Ryan stepped forward, voice low. You need to go. Lauren froze, tears mixing with rain, then turned and fled into the night, her sobs swallowed by the storm. Michael sat in Ryan's living room that night, staring at the recorder, the weight of the confrontation settling like ash. He didn't feel victorious, only hollow. But the hollowness was fuel, pushing him to act. The next morning, he met with Elena Torres, a divorce lawyer with a reputation for precision. No prenup, he explained, sliding a USB drive across her desk. But I have proof of infidelity, financial mismanagement, and verbal abuse. Elena skimmed the audio and video, her lips pursing. You've got a case. We'll push for full asset separation. House, savings, retirement. If she contests, we'll dig deeper. Bank statements, texts, travel records. Michael shook his head. She won't fight. She's scared of what else might come out. Elena's eyes gleamed. Smart man. Days later, Lauren's spiral deepened. Her marketing firm fired her after the audio leak spread, her professional network fraying. Friends ghosted her, and Vanessa cut contact, blaming Lauren for dragging her into the mess. Greg, Lauren's father, sent Michael a terse email, accusing him of destroying his daughter's life. Michael replied with the audio file and a single line. She destroyed herself. No response came. Lauren tried one last plea, a handwritten letter, tear-stained, begging for forgiveness, claiming she was in therapy, that the new guy was a mistake. Michael burned it in Ryan's fireplace, the ashes curling like his trust. Then a twist. A man named Connor, the new guy, contacted Michael through a mutual friend, asking to meet. They sat in a dive bar in Salem, Connor fidgeting, his face flushed. I didn't know she was married, he said, voice tight. She told me you two were done. I only found out when that forum post went viral. Michael sipped his coffee, silent. Connor leaned forward. She recorded that video without telling me. I never wanted any of this. She lied to me, too. Michael set his cup down. So why tell me? Connor exhaled. Because she used me to hurt you, and I'm not okay with that. Michael studied him, seeing not a rival, but another casualty of Lauren's chaos. You're not the problem, he said finally. She is. Lauren's unraveling accelerated. She was caught forging a prescription at a pharmacy, a minor scandal that made local news. Her mother stopped speaking to her. Greg called Michael, not to yell, but to plead. She's falling apart, Michael. She's not the daughter I raised. Michael's voice was gentle but firm. She made her choices, Greg. I can't fix her. The call ended in silence. A week later, Lauren tried to break into their Portland home, smashing a side window. Neighbors called the police, and Michael filed for a restraining order, granted the next day. Lauren was served at a friend's apartment, her last known address. Her world was collapsing, and Michael watched from a distance, not with glee, but with a quiet resolve. He wasn't destroying her. He was letting her face herself. Then, a package arrived at Ryan's. A plain envelope, no return address, containing a single sheet of paper in Lauren's shaky handwriting. "I know I can't undo what I did," it began. "I'm trying to be better, Michael, but I know you'll never believe me. I broke you, and that's the worst thing I've ever done." It ended with, "If you can't forgive me, at least know I'm trying." Michael read it once, then tucked it away. He wasn't ready to feel pity. Not yet. But the letter lingered, a crack in his armor, raising a question. Was she changing, or was this another act? And what would Michael do with the truth he still held? The video, the audio, the power to expose her further. Michael Harper sat at Ryan's kitchen table, the handwritten letter from Lauren resting unopened beside a cooling mug of tea. Its edges were creased from being handled, though he'd only read it once. Her words, "I broke you, and that's the worst thing I've ever done," echoed in his mind, not softening him but stirring suspicion. Was this remorse or another performance? The rain had stopped, leaving Salem's streets glossy under streetlights, but inside, the air felt charged, as if a storm had followed him indoors. Ryan glanced at the letter from across the room, tossing a dish towel over his shoulder. "You gonna respond to that?" Michael shook his head, his voice steady. "She doesn't get to dictate the terms anymore." Lauren's life was unraveling faster now, the consequences of her actions piling like debris after a wreck. Her termination from the marketing firm was permanent, her reputation in Portland's tight-knit professional circles tarnished beyond repair. Social media whispers had turned into outright accusations, with anonymous posts linking her voice to the viral audio. Her cousin Vanessa, once her confidant, blocked her after a public spat online, where Lauren accused her of leaking the recording. Old friends stopped replying to her texts, and her mother's silence was deafening. Greg, her father, sent Michael one final message, not pleading this time but resigned. "She's lost everything. I hope you're satisfied." Michael didn't reply. Satisfaction wasn't the point. Truth was. The restraining order held, keeping Lauren at a legal distance, but her desperation showed in other ways. She tried emailing him from a new account, a rambling message about starting over and finding herself. Michael marked it as spam. Then came reports from neighbors in Portland. Lauren had been seen lingering near their old house, not breaking in, but watching from across the street, as if waiting for him to appear. The police issued a warning, but Michael knew she wasn't done. She was a woman who thrived on control, and losing it was breaking her in ways he hadn't anticipated. His divorce lawyer, Elena Torres, called with an update that same week. She signed the papers, Elena said, a hint of surprise in her voice. No fight, no demands. She even waived spousal support. Michael leaned back in Ryan's spare chair, staring at the ceiling. "What's the catch?" Elena chuckled. "You're sharp. I bet she's trying to look noble, maybe hoping you'll soften. But we've locked down the assets, house, savings, retirement. She gets nothing unless you change your mind." Michael's jaw tightened. "I won't." Elena paused, then added, "There's one more thing. She wants to meet. Says it's not about reconciling, just to talk face to face." Her lawyer passed it on. Michael's fingers tapped the desk. "What do you think?" Elena's tone was firm. "Don't. She's grasping. You owe her nothing." Ryan, overhearing, shook his head. "She'll try to guilt you, man. Stay clear." But something in Michael stirred. Not forgiveness, but a need for closure on his terms. Against their advice, he agreed to meet. They met at the Portland house, now half empty, its walls stripped of Lauren's touches. Michael arrived first, standing in the living room where they'd once danced to late-night jazz. The space felt foreign now, a husk of their past. Lauren arrived 10 minutes late, her jeans loose, her sweater plain, no makeup to hide the shadows under her eyes. Her hands clutched a thin folder, trembling slightly. She didn't meet his gaze at first, staring instead at the bare coffee table. "Thank you for this," she whispered. Michael crossed his arms, voice flat. "Say what you came to say." She opened the folder, sliding it across the table. Inside were therapy notes, A journal page with scrawled apologies, a photo of a prescription bottle for antidepressants. "I know you think I'm a monster," she said, voice low. "I deserve that. But I'm trying to get better, Michael. I need you to see that." He glanced at the papers, his expression unreadable. "Why does it matter what I see?" Her eyes flicked up, wet and searching. "Because I lost everything. My job, my friends, my family. I'm not asking you to take me back. I need you to know I'm not that person anymore." Michael leaned forward, his voice cold. "You laughed about my death, Lauren. You filmed yourself with another man and kept it where I could find it. You don't get to rewrite that with a few therapy sessions." Her lip quivered, but she pressed on. "I was selfish, cruel. But I'm sorry, Michael. Truly." He sat back, studying her, the silence stretching like a taut wire. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a single sheet of paper, sliding it across the table. Lauren picked it up, her brows furrowing. Her face paled as she read. "What is this?" she stammered. Michael's voice was calm, deliberate. "A notarized statement from Connor. Says you lied about being separated, recorded him without consent, and tried to extort him for money when your life started falling apart." Her hand shook, the paper crinkling. "Extort? That's not true." Michael tilted his head. "Isn't it? He's willing to testify if I need him to." Lauren's eyes darted, panic rising. "You're threatening me?" He shook his head. "I'm showing you the truth you keep dodging. You built this mess, Lauren. Not me." She dropped the paper, tears spilling. "I've changed, Michael. I swear." He stood, his voice steady. "So have I." He walked to the door, pausing only to look back. "Don't contact me again." Her sob followed him out, but he didn't turn back. That night, he drove to a small apartment he'd rented near Salem's riverfront, a modest space with bare walls and a view of the Willamette. He unpacked only what he needed: books, a laptop, a single photo of himself hiking in the Cascades, taken before Lauren. The rest, he left behind, including the man who'd once believed love could fix anything. Michael started rebuilding, piece by piece. He joined a local running group, his breaths steadying with each mile. He signed up for a writing workshop, something Lauren had once called a waste of time. He didn't check her social media or ask about her. She was becoming a shadow, fading with each step he took toward himself. But one question lingered. What was Lauren planning? Her surrender in the divorce, her therapy claims, her tearful pleas, were they genuine or a final manipulation? And what would Michael do with Connor's statement, still tucked in his desk, a weapon he hadn't yet used? Michael Harper stood on the balcony of his Salem apartment, the Willamette River glinting under a late spring sun. The air carried the scent of blooming dogwoods, a quiet contrast to the winter storm that had shattered his world months ago. The recorder, the video, Lauren's letter, they were packed away in a box, untouched but not forgotten. He'd stopped replaying her words, stopped needing the pain to fuel him. The man who'd driven through sleet with a cake for a woman who mocked him was gone, replaced by someone harder, clearer, whole. Yet one final piece of the past arrived, unbidden, to test that wholeness. A package came in early June, no return address, just a plain envelope with his name in Lauren's familiar scrawl. Inside was a letter, longer than the last, its pages worn as if she'd rewritten it a dozen times. "Michael, I don't expect you to read this, but if you are, thank you," it began. "I moved to Boise, working at a small library. It's not much, but it's honest, something I wasn't with you." She described her life now, solitary, stripped of the glamour she once chased. "You were the best thing I ever had, and I broke it because I couldn't handle someone who loved me without conditions. Your kindness, your poetry, the way you'd hum while cooking, I saw it as weakness because I was terrified of being known. You knew me anyway, and I punished you for it." The letter wasn't an apology, not exactly. It was a confession, raw and unsparing. "The world's torn me apart," she wrote. "I've been called names, lost friends, been fired, shunned. But nothing hurt more than your silence that night in Astoria. You didn't shout, didn't curse, just walked away. That broke me more than my own words." She ended with a plea, not for forgiveness, but for belief. "I'm trying to be someone who deserves the life you offered me, even if I'll never have it again. I hope you find someone who sees you, Michael. I hope you laugh without hearing my voice. Goodbye, truly. Michael read it twice, his face still, then folded it back into the envelope. He didn't cry or rage. He walked to the kitchen, lit a match, and burned the letter over the sink, watching the flames consume her words. He'd said goodbye months ago, not with words, but with choices, walking away, rebuilding, choosing himself over her chaos. The ashes were his final release, not of her, but of the weight he'd carried. He didn't follow Lauren's life after that. Her social media, her struggles, her new start in Boise, they were hers, not his. He stopped answering texts from mutual friends asking about her, stopped checking forums where her name still surfaced. She was a ghost now, a chapter closed. Instead, Michael filled his days with new rhythms. He ran along the river at dawn, his stride stronger, his lungs clear. He published a short story in a local journal, the words flowing where they'd once been stifled. He bought a camera, capturing the Cascades peaks and Salem's quiet streets, a hobby Lauren had once dismissed as pointless. Each click of the shutter felt like reclaiming a piece of himself. One evening, his phone buzzed with a message from Claire, a woman from his writing workshop. Want to grab coffee tomorrow? Loved your latest piece. He smiled, not because he was ready for love, but because he was ready to live. He typed back, sure, house 3 at the cafe by the river. The reply came quickly. Perfect. See you then. He set the phone down, the smile lingering. He didn't need anyone to complete him. He was enough, a truth he'd fought to believe. The final act came not in confrontation, but in reflection. He wrote a letter, not to Lauren, but to her father, Greg, who'd once called him weak for exposing her truth. You said I should have kept it private, been a man, Michael wrote. But strength isn't hiding pain or protecting liars. It's walking away when you're broken and finding your way back to yourself. I did that, not for revenge, but for me. He mailed it, expecting no reply, needing none. The act was for him, a line drawn in the sand. Spring turned to summer, the river sparkling under longer days. Michael's apartment filled with small signs of life. A bookshelf, a framed photo of a mountain trail, a mug Claire left behind after a late-night talk about books. The ache of betrayal, once a constant, had faded to a faint scar, visible but no longer painful. He didn't seek love, didn't chase it, but when Claire laughed at his terrible puns or leaned against him during a walk, he didn't flinch. He was learning to trust, not others, but himself. The revenge wasn't the audio, the video, or the divorce. It wasn't even the silence that had undone Lauren. The revenge was peace. His peace, hard-won and fiercely guarded. As he stood on his balcony one July night, the river reflecting a crescent moon, he sipped his tea and let the world be. Lauren's words, her cruelty, her chaos, they were gone, burned away like her letter. What remained was Michael, not the man who'd driven through a storm with a cake, but the one who'd walked through fire and emerged whole.